Pan-Arabism, which originates from Arab ethnicity and Islamic religion, is a political term used for the ideology of the unification of all the Arab states. The origins lie in about 1915, when literacy was increased, leading to a cultural and literacy renaissance. Pan-Arabism took on its more formalized approach in 1930s, when it combined Marxist ideas with romantic nationalist views. The Sheriff of Mecca, who along with the Mashriq Arabs wanted independence from the Arabs of the Ottoman Empire, led by the Islamic Turks, introduced Pan-Arabism. It was created to empower the Arab states by forming alliances and economic cooperation. On the screen is our question that we are asking. In 1915 to 1916, an agreement between the United Kingdom and the Sheriff was established that if they could successfully rebel against the Ottoman Empire, the United Kingdom would support the Mashriq Arabs for independence. The Ba'ath Party was founded in Syria in 1928 with pan-Arab nationalist program and elements of both Marxism and fascism. Egypt, the most popular Arab-speaking country of the time, only joined Pan-Arabism in the 1950s. As before, they had remained separate as the Egyptian nationalism had taken place. Pan-Arabism was most popular during the 1950s and 1960s for various reasons. Britain and France had withdrawn their involvement with the Middle Eastern governments, and therefore Arab nations began to act with more individuality. In 1945, 7 Arab states formed the Arab League that promoted regional coordination. These combined forces were still, however, unable to prevent the creation of Israel in 1948. The creation of Israel will be explained more by Lara in the following clip. In Mark Murphy's book, it explains to us why Arabs were so dedicated towards Pan-Arabism during the 1950s and 1960s. There were several attempts to form a pan-Arab state, which all failed. In 1945, the support for pan-Arabism grew in the Arab world after the Suez Crisis. In 1958, there was the first instance of 2 countries unifying to form one country. This lasted until 1961, when the Syrian army carried out the coup. In 1948, also was the formation of the Arab Federation, which was founded between Jordan and Iraq, but then collapsed 6 months later.
Britain is directly responsible for the defeat of the Palestinian people in 1948. Britain encouraged Jewish immigration. Britain trained Jewish units to fight with armed units in World War II. The UN resolution was completely unjust. The Jewish forces were vastly better armed and trained than the Palestinians. What happened to the Palestinians in this war was the planned and systematic ethnic cleansing of a nation. "85% of Palestinians living within Israel's claimed borders were driven out of the country, and they and their descendants are now living in neighboring countries as refugees. 500 villages were completely destroyed so that there would be nothing for Palestinians to come back to. All Palestinian-owned land was converted into state property, and refugees were prevented from returning to their homes.
The decline of Pan-Arabism was evident when the Arabs were beat by the Israelis in the Six-Day War, as explained before, when the government of Pan-Arabism was unable to produce enough economic growth, therefore making it an irrelevant ideology. By the 1970s, the idea of Pan-Arabism was less evident, although crowds remained with the aspiration of the ambition. By 1990s, many were against Pan-Arabism.